Welcome everybody to a very special Fango Convo. Today we are joined by cast and crew of The Stylist. I'm your host, Angel, aka Horgirl Problems, and we are joined by stars Najarra Townsend, Brea Grant, producer, production designer Sarah Sharp, cinematographer Robert Patrick Stern, of course, director and writer Jill Gevargizian, and John, editor. Ta-da. All right.
Yay.
Hello, everybody.
Hey. All right. Go team. All right. Good morning. Okay. So The Stylist started out as a short film in 2016, right? And it went around the festival circuit and people are kind of losing their minds over it. You brought on basically the entire team from that, right? A lot of the same team with the exception of Brea because that's a new character.
Yeah, it's a large part of the same team.
Yeah.
We try to bring almost everybody back we could.
So how did everyone get involved with this project?
Oh wow!
Well, initially, the short.
Should we tell the pity story,
Yeah,
John?
I think this got to start. This got to start with John Pata.
The quick gist of it is I met Rob and Sarah in 2012 when we were working on a project then called Chop Shop, which then got reworked and re-released as Skeletons in the Closet, an anthology film. And that was the first time that we met and that we worked together, but it was an introduction through director Tony Wash. And around that same time, I was looking to make a short film that was called Pity. And in November of 2013, we shot Pity, and Rob and Sarah came on board to work on that. Jill had just made Call Girl and we were keeping in contact and she wanted to get involved with Pity as well. So everyone came to Wisconsin, we shot Pity, and then shortly after that is when talk of the Stylist short came to be. And just talking with Jill and I have been friends since 2012, and basically it was like, well, let's all make a short film together again with Jill.
Yeah, I was scheming to steal John's entire crew, basically, including John.
Well, it worked out well. That was a smart move on your part, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Najarra, how did you get involved with this?
I did a film called Contracted in 2013, and I met Jill at one of the festival screenings of that, and
John was there, but I don't know if you guys met.
I think we met briefly.
Yeah, you were there.
It was
Yeah.
very briefly. Yes.
Yeah. And then Jill reached out to me like a couple months later asking me to read the short and if I would be interested in it. And we had a Zoom call and she had me do like the final scene of the short over Zoom, and I was terrified.
That was terrible.
It was terrifying, but it went well, and that was that. And then she flew me to Kansas City to shoot the short.
I would love to see the video of that on Zoom. On the Zoom
Oh man,
call.
I wonder if I recorded it.
Yeah. You have to add that as like an extra features or something on the like Blu-ray release.
And like even smaller world thing, we shot Pity only a week or two after that festival that we met Najarra,
Yeah,
or was it the opposite?
Oh wow.
We met Najarra a week before we shot Pity. So yeah, in the matter of like a week, basically a large portion of the core of the Stylist team came together and met, because even Nicholas Ehlert, our composer, he came to set on Pity, which Rob and Sarah met for the first time. Jill then met for the first time, and yeah, it was kind of wild.
That's pretty cool. It came together pretty quickly then. Well, I mean, you had the bulk of that, and then just from then on, it moved pretty fast, it sounds like.
It was, I think it was actually almost a year later when I hit up Najarra with the short script. Because we probably shot the short almost a year after Pity.
Okay, all right.
It's been a long journey with all of us.
Brea, how did you get involved with the feature?
First of all, I thought it was really funny that y'all were like, how did you get involved? And your answer was Pity, which is like how I get everyone to work with me. I'm like, Pity. I feel like there's a joke to be made there.
Oh my gosh.
No, Jill, because Jill and I had a project that we were trying to get off the ground for a long time. We never quite got it off the ground, although we made stuff for it. But we met that way, which also has one of the same writers as the stylist, Eric J. Stoltz. And we just met. I was just aware of Jill's work because of the stylist. I think I saw it at Fantastic Fest, and had flown to Kansas City to shoot something. If you shoot with Jill, you have to fly to Kansas City. I guess that's the lesson.
That's true.
Good rule. So yeah, really ever since I met Brea, she just kind of kept coming to mind every time I was thinking about Olivia, the character. And then once we decided to kickstart the film, we reached out to her to see if she was available, because she's making like 100 movies right now.
And I think I said yes before I even read the script. I was like, yeah, of course, I'll just come do it, whatever. Like, I want to work with Jill. I was excited.
Jill, yes, I'm on board.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I love that. That's
The script is just like scribbles for like a couple pages.
Blah, blah, blah. Your character does just come to Kansas City. Like,
She's called Olivia. She wears cool shirts and we're shooting in Kansas City. I'm in. So for those of you that were, she does have cool shirts. So question about the costuming, actually. Did you already have, like, was that in any way inspired by the actual actresses who played these? Like, is that anything based on your own personal wardrobes, or was that totally different? Because Olivia and Claire have very distinct styles, very different, but both very cool.
I didn't personally base them on them. Now I'm thinking if I did it all with maybe Olivia, but no, with our costume designer is Hallie Sharp, and I had this like dream vision, especially for Claire's wardrobe. I had all these photos I shared with her, and I was like, there's no way on our budget we could come close to this, but maybe it's kind of. And it's like Claire's wardrobe is a crazy dream come true of a mixture of like 70s inspo and like Clueless, which I grew up with.
Yeah.
But we always wanted, from the start of the short to lean heavy into this movie being like style to the max with, every aspect of it. So we spent a lot of time planning all that out.
Well, it comes across on screen for sure, especially Claire's wardrobe, but also the set design. Claire's sort of like lair, if you will, and then also her home. Anytime she's in her own little world, it has this like very distinct kind of feeling to it, and it's very almost timeless because there are elements of like 70s mixed with Clueless, and then kind of this beautiful old historic house kind of looking thing, and it just has a very cool feel to it.
Thank you. That is
highly
a lot.
stylish.
Thanks to Miss Sarah Sharp, who doesn't want to maybe brag down there. And we have been calling it Claire's Lair for a long time.
Okay, there you go.
I'm
Well,
really
what it
impressed
feels like.
with how much layer comes up. I feel like everybody's been referring to it as a layer outside of the group, and that's amazing. I'm very pleased with that.
You guys definitely achieved that.
Yeah.
Claire's not sorry, what?
Lair is just not a go-to word, but it
Oh.
definitely, like,
But I
that's
mean,
what people
Claire's
think.
Lair, you got to say
Yeah.
it.
Hashtag.
And it was our hope, and a mix of everyone, Robert, Sarah, and our costume and our lighting, the idea that Claire's world would have this distinct look, so that when she was out in the real world, she really stands out.
Mhm.
For sure. Yeah, we kind of wanted it to be like her nest, like her warm place that
Mhm.
she could go.
Mhm.
It felt like very loving in her own way. And then everything else was a lot different outside of that nest. Little layer.
Yeah.
Absolutely has that feel. What was the collaboration process like between Jill and Sarah, talking about kind of what this world was going to look like, what Claire's like personal world was going to look like to make it so distinct?
Sarah, you should
Sarah
say
said
that.
pass.
Well, I mean, connecting on the short, like one of the first things that Jill had said to me pretty early on the short was that she wanted the color palette to be, this wasn't her words because that's 12 years ago at this point. Like, basically, that she wanted the short to be very stylized. She was very open to it being very color controlled. So we experimented with that on the short. and we all loved it. So that book had already been opened going into the feature. And with Claire being a redhead, you could definitely feed into the tones that you use. You could use stuff that isn't quite like as traditional because you're already dealing with like a hair color that is not as common. So that made it easy to keep her world like very antiqued, very warm. And then with Olivia, we just wanted to go like stark opposite, like choose colors, choose tones, choose textures that were trendy, that actually like had a time period. Like we wanted a timelessness overall, but it was just important for them both to translate very differently. Like Olivia should be cool to anyone. Any person that looks at Olivia should think that she is like cool regardless, either because she's wearing something that you wouldn't naturally, we're so inspired by Brea, you know. but that was just, it was very important for Olivia to not necessarily represent the world, but to also represent like the stark opposite of Claire. So that's why the movie feels, and it was cool like doing that on a constricted budget. You know, it's, you have to get creative in how you do that. You kind of have to know what you put the time. Well, like you bringing up the graphic tees, like that was like a big thing. Hallie Sharp's a costume designer that I work with quite a bit, and she was really who brought that idea up, because you don't see graphic tees and stuff like that in indies very much, because of the clearance thing, it gets really weird. So putting that as your like main focus for an indie movie, like that draws a lot of attention and establishes that character so quickly without necessarily having to put a ton of money into what like Olivia's backgrounds are. So it was cool. It was like a collaboration of like, how do we do this? We all have like $5. How do we put this on?
Well, and shout out to Wyco Vintage for finding us those badass t-shirts that didn't have copyright issues.
Great art. Like that was where Kansas City really was great overall, but they were baller as far as like
Vintage.
Hey y'all, this is what Kansas City is like a freaking cool town, so they know what cool looks like. So they were great as far as
a
like,
commercial for Kansas City.
Visit Kansas City now.
Visit Kansas City, get a cool shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
I would also say the wedding dress, like it's like, I mean, obviously this is an indie, you know, a lower budget indie, and that kind of thing is so tough to find like a good wedding dress, and it was designed to fit me. Like Hallie was like, take your measurements and whatever, and she just did an amazing job. I think she built that wedding dress. Am I right?
Yeah, it was made. Do you want to talk about it, Sarah?
So Hallie and I are friends with a seamstress named Sarah Albrecht, Sawto Sews. She's done a lot of gowns, a lot of stuff for like RuPaul. Super like the coolest, most like humble lady I've ever met in my life. But pretty much Hallie has just like she just saw the back of the dress from the first time she read the script, and then once she and Jill started talking on the style of the front, she was just like, I'm never gonna find this thing, we're just like gonna have to make it. And she was reminded of the budget, and that but she worked with, between like her and Jill's design, they worked with Sarah, and basically was able to like Frankenstein and not just two dresses. Don't want to give stuff away.
Spoiler alert.
One dress. There's only one.
One dress.
Well, you needed two for the production in case something happens to one. That would be terrible, right? You need a backup.
You gotta have
Gotta have that backup bagel. It's fine.
Anyway, I have all the backup wardrobe, by the way.
You just like strut around your house in it, like.
That might not true.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually really cool. And yes, Olivia definitely felt very fucking cool. Like I wanted to be her friend. Like I feel like she was like a badass, and she was also probably like a punk rock girl, and then grows up to be like this badass bitch, you know, like who's like a boss at work and stuff. And I was like, this is a very cool girl. Like I'd 100% want to be her friend.
Thanks.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. So well done bringing that to life. She also felt very real and like rounded. Like there's a point where she's talking with Claire and she's just kind of like going on about all this stuff that's happening with her, and then she like stops midway, and it was just like such a real moment because she stops and goes, oh God, I feel like I'm being so like narcissistic, like tell me about you, and then starts asking about Claire. And Claire's clearly taken off guard because she doesn't have relationships like this. So in just like this tiny little moment, you get so much insight into both of these characters with just like this, like in this 5-second span. So well done, everybody. That was written well, directed well, acted by you guys just so well. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, stop it.
Also, Claire evokes the kind of this feeling of like the Rolling Stones song sympathy for the devil, like sympathy for the psychopath, kind of like she's very like she's
Yes.
terrifying, but she's
Wow,
very she has this
yes.
gentle quietness about her. And then when that goes away and there's like that snap, it's extra terrifying because it's so opposite of how she plays the rest of the time. And she's like sweet and gentle and soft, and then you're like, oh shit, no, that's not it at all.
Thanks. That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah, so you're scary.
I've always loved like very characters that you feel very conflicted about, that it's there's not just one way to look at them.
Yeah.
And we tried to bring you so far onto Claire's side that, you know, I kind of hope people are starting to see things the way, in a delusional way, like how she feels rather than maybe what's really happening.
Well, even with the character of Olivia, like, yes, she's cool and I want to be her friend, but I also like, you feel like you're experiencing her through the lens of Claire, and some of the social cues you're like, I'm not really sure how to read certain social cues, but I think it's also because I'm reading it through kind of a semi-awkward Claire lens, you know?
Yes, exactly.
So it definitely has that feel to it, which I loved.
Thank you.
Also, another scary aspect of this for me, I don't think it's spoilers, but I feel like when you watch a horror film and it's very clear, it's like a morality tale. So there's these set rules and you can look at it and watch these horrible things happening, but you kind of know like, okay, if I don't break these rules, then I'm safe. In this instance, I feel like it's kind of a free for all. So it's like scary because it's like, oh no, it doesn't matter. I could do all this shit or not do all this shit, and it doesn't matter. She could still come for me. And that's very scary.
It really is like that in the film, but it's interesting because we're kind of telling the portion of Claire's life that's the spiral to the end, and versus like her normal serial killer career where it's been planned out and it goes well. We kind of only get the beginning of the film, you get a snippet of that, and then get to see what happens when it no longer goes well, to not spoil things. But that's why kind of with each kill, you could say things are getting, we're losing track of who Claire was, or she's kind of becoming, disassociating from that throughout the film.
It's kind of a bit heartbreaking to watch too, because you can tell she's conflicted. Like she's not like on this spree and just like maniacal with like, and like having such an amazing time. Like there's bits of that. And then you just watch her with like this horrible internal struggle, and you really feel for this character. Like I'm terrified, but I also like, I feel really bad for this woman at the same time. Which is also
Najarra,
scary.
what was it like to be so scary?
I definitely didn't think of it like that. Like that's the thing. I obviously didn't go into it like judging Claire. I had sympathy for Claire and felt bad for her. So it's nice that it's portrayed like that I'm scary. But yeah, I don't know.
Scary, but still sympathetic, and which is hard to pull off. And so much of that is nonverbal. It's just like in the breakdowns and the expressions and the energy that's like coming out of the screen.
Yeah, but there's so many things that like I feel like are relatable with Claire, which is like the beauty of the direction and the writing and the camera work. Like people are awkward in real life and can't read social cues sometimes, and I think being able to relate to that is what I guess makes her sympathetic.
Mhm.
Is you're like, oh yeah, I've been through that. I don't respond in the same way necessarily, but
It was logical response, absolutely.
We also approached it like, since this is, Claire's story, it's not a traditional slasher that's told from the perspective of the victims. So we don't really ever, when that's the story, we don't get to know the villain naturally. They're,
Mhm.
one-dimensional. So that's why I think she's conflicting, because you learn everything, well, not everything, but you learn a lot about her and see that it's not just that one thing, which is why I love these very confrontational characters.
And it's fun to have a female serial killer too. There's not a whole lot of that, obviously, so it was kind of cool to have that and then get to see all these other aspects of her life, see her at work, see her engaging in trying to make friendships and navigate awkward social cues and dressing really cool in the process. Like all of that's part of it. Like, oh yeah, she's stylish as hell too. That's awesome. Sorry, let me see. Do you guys have any fun filming anecdotes that you want to share?
Where do we begin there? Does someone have a story?
There's a lot of blood and grotesque effects in this. Any stories with that?
I don't know if we want to spoil too much, but
Yeah.
I will say I'm in the film, and John came down and directed that scene, and it was a lot of fun. I don't, what can we say anything about that, John, that's not too spoilery?
What can we say about that?
Oh, well, it was snowing that day, and we decided it can't snow on camera, so we had people removing snow off the
Oh my
ground.
Lots of
God.
snow. Lots of
Multiple
snow
times.
removal. Long, cold, wet night. Lots of snow removal. Indoor and outdoor shooting. It was quite extensive for one shooting day.
How long were you guys on that for? How many hours did that take between snow removal and mashing it up?
We jumped on the snow removal early.
Yeah, snow
Okay.
removal was definitely like a free call scenario,
Yeah,
but
we were swing call that day. That's for sure.
yeah,
Okay.
we still got it in the normal hours.
I think
Oh,
that
nice.
one of the things that was the most impressive to me in this movie that I now like want to like shout to the heavens to anyone preparing to make their first features or making their first film is that one of the things that I think this film definitely couldn't afford it, but I don't even know if films with substantially larger budgets afford it, is the extras turnout. Like the background involvement in this movie is pretty through the roof. Like I know like Rob and I were always like several of us
amazed.
lost sleep over the concept of like people not showing up and it being pretty pivotal that people do need to show up.
And amazed that they do.
And
it's wild.
Jill is definitely like Jill and even Najarra remotely. I mean, they have definitely done a beautiful job like taking everyone seriously. Because in some way like these people can, whether even if it's just like watching your movie down the road, that's great, but also when you're getting ready to like make a movie, like every relationship Jill had formed like showed up to do overnights.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I don't think I've really had reaped the benefits quite like what Jill has set us up for in Kansas City, because like all those people that showed up, like there was
and lots of different people.
So
too.
many different
it's
people.
Not like
we
in
had
Chicago where there's like the same 30 keep changing wardrobe in the back. This is like a legit different amount of people every time.
Yeah. And so that's not necessarily like a funny thing that happened, but that was like probably, there was a lot of learning lessons, but that was probably the biggest learning lesson that I wasn't prepared for, was the fact that like every relationship you make like can be so valuable to like your artistic work in a way that you don't even expect. And like having these people show up and dance and be crazy and walk around in an office behind Olivia and make that actually like feel like it wasn't
empty.
A big empty building. Like it was, that's the thing that like I would tell people, that's the true like relationships more valuable than money in that situation.
Plant those seeds
Plant
so that they can
plant the
be
seeds.
extra.
Find
Plant
people
those
and
extra
friends with them so you can use them later.
And the moral
what
of the story.
The moral of the story doesn't matter if they don't have money.
It's true.
No, it was just like, it was just a lot of fun to see. And also that was just so encouraging. Like having these people show up that were like just jazzed to be there.
Yeah.
To like dance kind of.
Sort of.
Speaking of dancing, though, we were
Yeah.
shooting this big dance club scene overnight the night before the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade last year. So that was a very hectic ordeal, which we didn't think would even be possible. We were like attempting to plan for it, not knowing, if what would happen with that game, if this parade would happen.
Because the
And-
parade comes right in front of our location.
Yeah, literally down the street in front of the club we were shooting. So, but in the end, somehow we shot overnight, like shuttled everyone out 4 hours before the parade, except for I stayed behind. No one else in this group stayed to party. But and even that night was the night we needed like 50 some extras to be dancing around, and people still came out even though everyone was going to the parade the next day. We're like, we just needed to sit around till maybe 4 or 6 a.m. No big deal.
Yeah.
It's very casual. Just sit here in the corner till 6 a.m. overnight. It's fine. I love that you brought that up though, because I'd honestly, it's not something I would even think of. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you need extras for a nightclub. There needs to be people dancing and partying in there.
Mhm.
Olivia has to have coworkers. So there needs to be people in the office, and it can't be Claire just walking by back and forth. Like,
Well, and just how much value
would be
that brings
great.
on screen.
Yeah.
Like, that was-
yes.
it was
Absolutely.
just
Well,
like-
it brings the world to life. Like it's
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a world that it exists. This looks realistic. This is what it looks like when I'm at the office or
Yeah.
out at a club or out in a coffee shop or wherever,
Background always changes the value of everything when you're looking at it.
Yeah.
Good background changes movies, in my opinion.
big time.
I think
And it's
another
real
interesting. Sorry, oh, did I cut you
No,
off,
you
Jill?
Your turn,
All right.
John.
I was just gonna say, it was also Panic Fest was going on at the same time in Kansas City, the week-long film festival. And like, for example, After Midnight was showing. So Brea could go from set to go to Panic Fest to do Q&A. The Stylist short played, so everyone came back for that. Anthony Cousins, who is a grip of ours, directed one of the segments in Scare Package. So then and then I was hosting a couple screenings as well. So it's also just a very interesting communal aspect to not just the film that we were making, but to the horror crowd and the horror fan base period as well.
Mhm.
That we were kind of like ebbing and flowing back and forth between set and the film festival, which was stressful at times, but also just a great opportunity.
It sounds stressful, but in hindsight, I'm like, that's an awesome story. But I know in the moment it was probably like, this is a lot.
Yes.
It was crazy.
Yeah, Brea landed in town, and then we're like, let's go to Panic Fest right now.
I was in my airplane clothes. And I do differentiate between airplane clothes and regular clothes. I realize.
Yeah, free. Big
Same
time.
here.
Yeah.
Two separent entities entirely.
Once they're on the
Absolutely.
airplane, they're filthy. Okay, that's fine.
You just get off, put them in a bag, and burn the bag.
Especially if you were to go on a plane now.
Yeah, especially COVID airplane clothes. It's in its whole nother category. Toxic waste clothes.
Well, and that's probably worth mentioning too. We wrapped production a month before shutdown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
Yeah,
barely
that's
got the
amazing.
shot just in time. I don't know.
you
It's
guys
The film
just
incredible.
gods
made
were
it.
looking after us.
Yeah, in the nick of time.
Truly.
So you guys obviously are not strangers to the horror genre. All of you have worked in horror. So what is it that draws you to horror in general? Brea, do you want to start?
Wow. I was gonna make a joke.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Go back.
Some joke about what's horror. I don't have a good joke. For me, I think for me, there's so many elements, and it's almost like the perfect storm. I started my career doing a lot of genre work as an actor and found that to be really interesting work, but also the fandom around it was just really nice. I felt like I really liked like as an actor, I would always have people watching my movies, which was really exciting. But more than that, I think like I'm a fan of horror and I'm a fan of genre. So it's hard for me to even consider making something outside of the genre space. Because it's what I consume as a person. I mean, reading, writing, watching, everything is all genre stuff. So it's just sort of what I'm going to be drawn to as a creative person in general, because I think not only do I love just like kind of stepping out of my own universe, like God forbid I do not want to watch a stupid thing about COVID at my, like people talking about COVID at my house. Like, screw that. I want like some fantastical story that's like what I want to watch is what I want to create. And not only that, but I think horror allows like this space in which you can explore broader themes and bigger political themes without it being shoving it down people's throats. I think that I mean, that's what I originally started. When I started reading comic books and when I started getting into horror, I was like a punk rock teen, and I was like part of anarchist collectives, and I was like trying to like find art that sort of represented the politics that I was into, and the genre space I felt like just was reflecting more of the things that I was drawn to.
Hell yeah. All right, Robert, do you have an answer for that?
I do actually.
Let's hear it.
Like from a design standpoint, like on like a role-playing side, you get to see all the different departments in genre play. Like if you're shooting like a horror or a versus a comedy, like in a horror film, you get to play in special effects, you get to play with stunt a little bit, you get to play a little bit with maybe extremer wardrobe or camera work or lighting, whereas like in a comedy, you don't get to explore all these different departments. So from like a tech aspect, from a design aspect, everybody plays like in the sandbox, which is like super fun. Everyone gets to go to 11 if they want to.
Yes. Awesome. Sarah, do you have anything to say about it?
I mean, that would be what I would say. I'm definitely more of a reader versus a watcher of anything, really. So the process of like actually making the film is what is way more important to me than like truth be told, like I could just like make films all the time and never watch them, but and the making of genre projects versus like all the versus I work a lot in other genres. I just think they're more fun, but I think it's also because like the fandom of genre bleeds into your crew. I've never worked on another project really where like like John's bringing up, John is also a horror director. Anthony Cousins is a horror director. He was our key grip. John's our editor. We had one of my set dressers is also a director. I mean, Brea is a director. I mean, I've never really worked in another space where I saw that much come together, also because like this is an art form they like to speak through no matter the role they're in. And that's what's made working in horror and genre stuff like more special to me, because I've never experienced that in another, like making other projects ever. So I think that's cool.
It is cool. That's awesome. How about you, Najarra?
I mean, they both nailed it with those answers. Yeah. I completely agree with everything that was said. I've always been attracted. I love watching genre in general, and I've always just loved making horror movies because I think everything feels a little like elevated. Like I get to play these like amazing female roles that are so like there's just so much. I don't know. There's so much to them. For some reason, that's what it feels like, at least whenever I don't. Compared to like a romantic comedy or certain drama films. Also the community, like just in general, is phenomenal and so supportive of each other. And I love special effects and I love stunts, and it's always all in there. Like it's just making horror films have always it's just been so much fun. I made my first horror film when I was 10, and I didn't like horror movies before that very much. And it completely changed my perspective on them, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is how this works. Like, this is so cool. So I've been a fan my whole life.
What's that movie? I want to see it.
I was just wondering that too.
You're 10.
Yeah.
It's out there somewhere.
I'll never.
That should be in
know.
special features too.
Nice.
A little bonus short. John, what draws you to the genre?
Everything everyone has said, but another great thing is nothing is off limits when it comes to horror. When you're making horror, you're making genre, you can add in comedic elements. You're going to be playing with dramatic elements. And then it's almost kind of like you just have a wide spectrum of storytelling and filmmaking that you can get involved in. You know, so like if you were making, let's say, a romantic comedy, do you really get to throw in a bunch of special effects? Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. But horror is versatile.
Maybe though. Yeah.
You can do so much with it. And also, I like storytelling and I like world building. And I feel like you can explore just so much world building when it comes to genre and horror especially. So it's just fun. I mean, I think to summarize, that's really what it is. It's just fun.
All right, Jill.
No fair. Everyone already said everything.
Yeah, you say, all right. You could say, agreed.
Well, I think it's interesting what Sarah said. I also never thought about it that way, that is a cool thing about horror. Like we're all willing to work on anyone's film if it's a horror film, because it's that we love horror that much. But I guess it started for me like this sounds very dark, but as a very little girl, I fell in love with movies that made me cry. I was just like, I think amazed that something I watched could affect me like that deeply. And so I became obsessed with any movie that could make me cry. And then once I discovered scary stuff, I think it was like a similar thing, that it was another genre or another type of filmmaking that was not just passive. It's like, it engages you deep, like emotionally and seriously. You can't just like throw it on in the background. Now we can, because I've seen all of them over and over again, but that's really kind of where it started with me. And then I love to fuse the two, tragedy and horror, which is kind of what we tried to do here with the Stylist.
So you got into it to manipulate our emotions, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Don't
Achieved.
you guys love movies because it makes you feel something? I mean, that's my
100%.
favorite thing about it.
Yeah. Wait, what's your number one like cry fest movie? Do you have one that you're just like, this one I just bawl?
It's hard to like cry again in movies, I think, for me, but
really, it's just like a one and done for you?
Most recently, like Moonlight is a movie that like rocked me, that shot to like my top 5 movies the second I watched it. But as a kid, it started with like Land Before Time. While that has a very sad moment, it's ultimately like a hopeful film about overcoming grief. And like, I think I look back on that, I'm like, that's cool. That was my favorite movie as well. But I learned, and I didn't, of course, think about directors as a 5-year-old, but that Don Bluth had, I don't know if he just wrote all those films, Land Before Time, An American Tale, and All Dogs Go to Heaven, all these films about loss. And I was like, wow, that is like heavy stuff. And I loved all those films.
The one dude who's out here making heavy, heavy children's content.
Got to.
Going.
But you know, I do love all those movies. I love what you guys all said about just kind of like the community and just being fans. And it's true. Like, I feel like I get to talk to all these amazing people, but everyone is fans, which is like makes it so fun because it's so different. Like, imagine having a conversation like this and being like, oh, I'm a horror fan. And then somebody's like, oh yeah, I read the script and I was like, I might as well do this because it's a job, you know? But it's like, I always get the feeling like everyone is like such a fan and can talk about all this stuff and they just have so much fun. And I imagine then just being on set is so much fun. And that's why you guys are like, okay, I'm going to hop over onto your project and okay, I'm going to act in this, but I'm also directing this if you guys want to come and do this. And it's just like this whole like synergizing, like it's just such a cool community. And I love to see this. It's awesome.
It becomes like, we call it our film family. We're all trying to help each other get wherever we're trying to go. And we can all, I feel like, do it together.
100%. And I love to see that too. And Jill, it has to make you feel so great to hear things like, oh no, Jill is doing this project. So I was already a yes, like already before reading the script, I knew that I wanted to do this. Or like extras, like when Sarah's talking about like extras showing up. And it's like, well, yeah, you've cultivated these relationships and you're the type of person that people want to show up for. And that's fucking cool.
It's too much to handle. When I but when I watch the film, it's very special in that way. Like, yeah, every background actor, I like get a kick out of it. I'm like, oh, there's Chris, there's Andrea, I cut that chick's hair every 4 weeks. Like, and I think Brea said that at one point on set. She's like, everyone here is either like you cut their hair or that you're their friend or something.
Like day one, it was like I was walking around that office and like, I don't think he was your CPA, but he was a CPA or something. And I was like, wow, you like came to work on like, like it's such a weird, like, especially, you know, I mostly work in LA and that it's just a very different experience as far as like who's on set and who wants to have a conversation with you. Cause I'm going to talk to whoever's around, but it is, on indies and outside of LA, I find it's just, there's a lot more community as opposed to Los Angeles where everything is, you know, peace out, I'll be back in my trailer, you know, kind of thing. It's just a different world.
Yeah.
So you mean that when you're in LA shoots, you don't end nights back at the crew house on like a gigantic couch with 18 people huddled on it watching movies?
Not.
LA is doing it all wrong. I think I want to move to Kansas City actually now. You guys sold me on that PSA.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It should say at the bottom of the movie, sponsored by Kansas City. Sponsored by the tourism board of Kansas City.
We need to add like a little jingle in. Like that will like really drive it home. I'm here for the jingles always. Jill, you know, I didn't even mention, and I meant to bring this up earlier. You are actually a stylist, and what motivated you to create this story?
Well, it really just started with the like plain, like just the thought that how does a hairstylist killer not already exist? It's like, this is so obvious, especially if you went very, very slasher or torture-y porn, and because there's lots of, this is very morbid to say, but like lots of ways and tools to torture or kill someone with in the salon. I'm gonna lose all my clientele. Great. I actually, most of them know me very well, so they think it's cool, but there are a few clients I've gotten that are newer in the last couple of years. And recently I did tell someone what it was about, and they were looking at me very like nervous.
As you're cutting their hair with sharp scissors.
Yeah, and they're the only person in the salon too. And I'm like, well, it's a good thing you haven't seen it yet, or you would probably leave right now. And actually, you have me think, like, I feel like I'm realizing this right now, that maybe because I'm a hairstylist and so many of my clients are, you know, different types of people, it's not just like my crowd, whatever that means. And so I feel like that's kind of why we had such a array of extras, because so many, I tell like every client about that. I'm so excited about it that tons of the extras end up being clients. So it's people from all different types of, you know, social circles.
Which makes it look like a real world. Like if everyone just looks the same and it's clearly like, oh, all your friends came to hang out and be extras, like it doesn't work. That's nice. Okay, one more thing. The scalping was disgusting. Like scalping is such as like a visually grotesque, nasty thing. I'm pretty sure the effects were quite good, but I have to admit I did watch a lot of them kind of like because it's just so gross. And the sound effects, it just like pushes it over the edge, and I'm just like, oh God, like this is a lot. So do you guys have a lot of fun working with that kind of stuff, and the blood and the gore and the nastiness?
Oh yeah.
Yes, we do.
It makes it challenging, that's for sure.
Scheduling, no, it's not fun working with special effects on a scheduling standpoint, but
when you get those call sheets, you know it's going to be like a challenging day, but thrilling, you know. So.
And when you're on such a low budget, like I was very aware, like I have probably one take, maybe two to do this, but if I have to do it again, that's that much more time and money, and like, so it is very fun and also stressful.
No pressure, but get this right on the first take.
It works.
It's a
She's over
one,
there
no
like,
pressure.
She's like, oh God, is it actually gonna come off? I think it's helping.
Yeah. Not the acting there is completely not acting. I'm just really like terrified. I'm like, is this gonna work?
It's very method. It works.
That's
Yeah,
a
there's-
great perspective though. I feel like you never really hear the actors get to talk about like, you know, the crew, we're all like sweating bullets and stuff like that because we have like and we're all freaking out because like, what if the thing explodes and shoots Claire in the face or whatever? But you know, but the thought of it also being the person on screen with that stress, I had not thought about that to such an extreme degree until right now that Najarra brought it up. That would be brutal. Like, you
I
did
even
great.
remember on the short, which was like a dream one take scalping. If that's a thing, I don't know, maybe, but
It is now.
it is now. But I remember seeing Najarra, like, you know, it's overhead, so you can't see her face, but she's like, I don't know if I'm still supposed to be going. And we're just like, don't stop pulling it.
Yeah. That's
So
the
we
other
were
thing.
extra
When something-
nervous. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off. When something goes wrong in a special effect, you have to do your best to like keep going and pretend like nothing went wrong, because if you break that, then you've ruined the take too. Like it's just, there's a lot. Special effects are intense.
That's going to be the tagline for this. Special effects are intense. No, but that is, I imagine that is a lot of pressure though, because you're like in character and doing this thing as your character, but you're also like, please don't fuck this up, or like, please don't rip like somewhere where you're not supposed to rip, or something bad happens and they have to like try and reset this whole thing.
Yeah.
Or the tubing gets clogged. Just don't clog tubing.
Uh,
Don't clog. That's what I
Don't
Lots
said.
clog
of
the
blood
tubing.
tubes
Don't
in
do it.
this movie.
What?
Um,
A lot of tubes.
we brought back the same special effects team from the short, Colleen Kaufman and Phil Spruill, and so we were really excited, not to be spoilery, but we kind of approached, you know, our first scalping like the short, but as the violence continues, it's, you know, we don't do the same thing ever again. Kind of each kill escalates significantly. So we're really excited to like show off different things in each kill as far as the special effects went.
I imagine it had to be fun in general to create this world in the short and then just get to kind of go wild with it and expand it so much for the feature. Like that had to be fun for you guys, I imagine.
Very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many people were fans of the show. We had to figure out how to get like Claire into the real world. So that was a wild experience to expand upon.
That's true, because you don't see her existing in the real world in the short. You just see her in her kind of like her element, we'll say, you know.
Yeah.
And it's great because there are these like Easter eggs I guess you could call them Easter eggs in the feature, but it's just so much an extension of the short, like certain lines that she says or things that are placed in her house and in her lair. And you're like, oh, hey, that's, you know, an extension of the story. It's the same world. Very cohesive. Well done, everybody. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
especially had to bring back the line that we never knew this like dialogue was going to make everyone laugh in the short film. The Jennifer Plass in the short says, "What the fuck, Claire," right before she gets killed. And we were like, it became this big like line, and we're like, we got to put it somewhere in the future.
I feel like that's a very natural reaction if it's somebody that you know and you
Yeah.
trust and you like engage with on a regular basis. I feel like those might be my last words, like, what the fuck, Claire? It's not what I would like ideally want my last words to be, but is like an honest, like it would just come out like, what the fuck? All right, you guys have anything else that you want to share? Any other anecdotes or any cool little tidbits? No, done. All right. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. This was really cool. I'm very excited for everyone to watch this. Watch the short if you have not seen the short. It's short, so it's very easily digestible and quick. And then go watch The Stylist streaming on Arrow March 1st. Yay!
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thank
All right,
you.
you guys are
Fangoria.
awesome. Thank you. All right, make sure to subscribe to Fangoria, fangoria.com. You could find me at horrorgirlproblems.com and Twitter, horrorgirlprobs. And go follow all of these wonderful humans as well. All right. Thank you guys. You're awesome. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Okay, bye.
Bye.